Senator Tom Udall is going to be putting across a constitutional amendment that the Senate is apparently going to be voting on this year that would allow increased federal control over campaign finance laws and also allow the states to have more control over their state campaign finance laws. Let's give you some details about that bill. Udall's bill would allow Congress to limit fundraising and spending on federal campaigns, give states the authority to govern campaign finance laws at the state level, and allow Congress to oversee super PACs and independent expenditures. Now, this amendment is, of course, a response to the McCutcheon decision and perhaps even more egregiously, Citizens United. And because those were decisions by the Supreme Court, simply passing a bill would not allow you to get around that. It needs to be a constitutional amendment, and so that's the direction Tom Udall is going in. He says, free and fair elections are a founding principle of our democracy, but the Supreme Court's rulings have ensured that they are now for sale to the highest bidder. It's now crystal clear that we need a constitutional amendment to restore integrity in our election system. Now, we're of course going to debate if this is the direction we should go in terms of an amendment, and also if it's likely to pass, but it's good that it at least will be discussed and it'll be up for a vote.
Absolutely. I like that this is at least on the politicians' radar. There are some politicians that are in favor of it, and I mean, that's obviously what we're trying to bank on when it comes to Wolfpack and what we're trying to do with passing a constitutional amendment. The one thing that I would like to note about lobbying is, lobbying is already a really big problem. We all know that. But it's interesting that we didn't know the extent of how bad it was in terms of funding until The Nation wrote this really great piece about it, and it uncovers the issue of shadow lobbying. So there are now certain loopholes put in place, they've been put in place for a while, that allow lobbyists to spend money undercover, and it's not transparent. You don't know exactly how much money is being sent or spent. And it's kind of crazy to know that the democratic process gets violated under the campaign finance laws that we have now, and there's a lack of transparency. So sometimes you have politicians that are funded by special interests that you're completely unaware of. And as the American people, we should be able to have that information. Lee Fong wrote that piece. You guys should check it out, Shadow Lobbying in The Nation.
So I guess the question becomes, since this is one layer of it, of course, everyone would understand, a constitutional amendment is what's needed. But then it goes to just, let's reform and reposition where the power will be for what people can have and what we can do with our campaign laws. Instead of just going straight to, of course, what wolf-pack.com does, we're going to plug that, which is taking it all out in the first place. So really, these guys can relax. And again, Udall is in here sounding like a brave guy going, I'm gonna try and go around these horrible decisions by the Supreme Court, and we're gonna do this, okay? And then, so it seems like it's fiery. He's gonna just change the whole system. We're gonna have free and fair elections. Not yet. But again, I'm hopeful on this one, at least. It's something. It's on their radar, as you said. At least maybe we're going downhill. It doesn't happen immediately. So I'm going to be a little patient for this one.
And look, it needs to go beyond a number of politicians, raising their voices about it. The reality is, members of Congress, people in the Senate have an incentive to not pass this type of legislation. So it's up to the American people to actually take a stand against it. And you can obviously do so by joining Wolfpack, and any type of political activity through that political action committee would definitely be helpful. But it's time for us to stop being so complacent with what's happening to our political system. There's been a lot of complacency, and that's the reason why I feel like our so-called democracy, and yes, I know we're a republic, everyone calm down, but our democratic process is slipping through our hands.
I had a question. I wonder what you guys think, because this is one of the things, as we know, this isn't going to pass. This first wave of it isn't going to pass.
Yeah, even the Democratic leadership admits it's probably
right. It's not. But again, it's good to put up there. But in comparison, the first thing I thought was the way Republicans consistently voting against Obamacare, to defund Obamacare and get rid of it. And was it 56, 70 times they've been doing this? Is this one of those things, and everyone's getting tired of it? It's just turning to one of those things where it seems like a clown show. So if this is one of those things where it gets shot down, then you reintroduce it, I wonder if it would get watered down or if it would really gain momentum, because I don't think people even know how this works, obviously. And then it again gets in your mind of how this works, which it kind of muddied the waters on Obamacare when they kept voting for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be great to see that happen in the Senate over and over. Unfortunately, like structurally, it's more difficult to vote on something multiple times in the Senate than in the House, unfortunately. But just to give you a little bit more information about Tom Udall, so I wanted to do some research, and so I did the initial thing you do, you Google his name. And two things came up. One, that he was introducing this constitutional amendment to increase federal regulation over campaign finance reform, and the other was an announcement that he had recently raised $1 million for his upcoming election. So understand that, look, it's great that he wants to change it, But he is still benefiting from and apparently doing quite well in a system that requires large amounts of money. And I don't want politicians to be in control of this. Those are the people I trust the least, maybe a little bit more than the Koch brothers or something like that. I don't want them in control of it. I want something very simple. I want a constitutional amendment that says that corporations are not people and money is not speech. And I know that that sounds like a crazy thing to say. Only crackpots would say that. Today, John Paul Stevens, former Supreme Court Justice, said money isn't speech, testifying before the Senate Rules Committee. So it's just me and a former
He's an old crackpot.
Exactly, he's an old guy. He's 94. What does he know anymore? So we all agree on that, but it's crazy to say that on Capitol Hill. Now, I think, understand that because they know this isn't going to pass, they're not bringing it up because it's the fire that drives their political spirit. It's because we're going to an election and they want to differentiate themselves from the Republicans. And to that extent, or in that mission, listen to what Chuck Schumer said. We're going to bring it up and we ought to pass it in the Senate without delay. I will be working with Senator Udall and Majority Leader Harry Reid and every Republican who cares about honest elections to bring it to the floor this year. He goes on to say, it's time for Congress to act, to reassert its role and protect the rights of all Americans, not just those with the fattest wallet, that's a good little term, to participate in our political system and be heard. The Supreme Court is trying to take this country back to the days of the robber barons, allowing dark money to flood our elections. That needs to stop, and it needs to stop now. The only way to undo the damage the court has done is to pass Senator Udall's amendment to the Constitution, and Senate Democrats are going to try to do that. Before the year is out, we're going to bring it up on the Senate floor for a vote where we hope Republicans will join us in ensuring the wealthy can't drown out middle-class voices in our democracy.
I've always said
I like the
before,
terminology there.
Because you said you don't want to trust in politicians that have the power of how this will work. And really, they're being told by the money, of course. So it all goes back to them again, the money controlling everything. That's why money can do it no matter what setup you do, unless you give the power back to the people. Yeah. The money will control it in whatever way it is because they control these politicians. I've always thought a way to I guess, convince some of these guys, and of course, as Wolfpack is gone, we heard about a lot of politicians or even congressmen, senators who are making phone calls to groups and organizations, and they go, I noticed you haven't given me any money yet, and I want to let you know that I'm a powerful member of this particular committee, and I'll help with this, this, and that. And all they're doing is telemarketing the whole time. They're not even on the floor making their votes on things that their citizens actually give a shit about. Yeah. So instead of actually doing the job, they're constantly fundraising. To get $1 million like that, I'm sure that didn't happen overnight, or if it did, it was because of a huge donor. Yeah. But if they get the pitch that you get to stop being telemarketers, that's probably refreshing to them. Yeah, it is. I don't know if you guys have had telemarketing jobs, but I've had 2 of them.
I've had 1.
I worked on a congressional campaign, and it was terrible calling people up.
Yeah, you never want to do it.
I don't like calling people I know.
Yeah, and call people at 6 o'clock, and you hear someone go, "I'm eating dinner. I'm trying to have dinner." It is just, you feel like a beggar.
Schmuck.
Yeah.
I don't think that they want to do that, but it's also like we say we want fundamental campaign finance reform because we want to elect people whose skills lie not in raising money, but in ruling our country wisely and representing the average citizen. And then you tell that to 100 people in the Senate who are like, wait, I'm really good at raising money. That's how I got in the Senate. I don't want some guy who's going to do much. Exactly. They're not going to go for that. They're going to bring it up and look good, but they're probably not going to.
What about the thought that, because I've seen this too, there's people who come into office and they're fire breathers and I'm going to change the system, and within 3 years you go, what happened to that guy?
You mean Obama?
And things that happen to so many levels, because they get in there and they go, oh, I can't actually do all that stuff because if I do and don't fundraise, I'm going to be out of here. Yeah. So I think a certain percentage of them, probably a very small percentage, think, well, I got to do it this way so I can stay and hold my seat, and then maybe eventually do something maybe once for my citizens. Yeah. And it never happens because that's all you do is fundraise. And I think somewhere in some of them, they really believe that they can make a difference. But if they have a chance to, maybe they will.
Yeah. Yeah, so Democratic senators, I think it's great that you're talking about it. You continue to do that, bring it up, raise awareness, while Wolfpack members around the country are doing the hard work to actually restore democracy.